Okay, so welcome to Circle of Spirit, Queer Questions, Sacred Answers. I'm Sadhaka with New Aeon Awakening, and I'm doing this in association and partnership with Orange Dragonfly Center and my buddy JP. So if you want any information about the stuff that we're doing, you can go to Orange Dragonfly Center and find more presenters. This is being recorded. Obviously, if you're seeing it after the fact, then that's kind of a given for posterity. Because, well, actually what we're going to be talking about to begin with today is community building. And so that goes right into it. We're trying to create a space for gay men, queer men, trans men also in particular to just come and let their hair down and talk about the particular issues that are plaguing us, that we have, questions that we have in terms of spirituality, in terms of our spiritual practices, in terms of spiritual communities, and the particular issues that that we face that other people may not face in heteronormative society. So it's a big topic. There's a lot of topics, but I don't think there are that many spaces that are public where you can do that, and it's been a really interesting 3 years since I've been hosting the meeting for spiritual gay men. And there's another one. That would be Mahesh. Because we've pretty much come to the conclusion that basically all of us are eclectic. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have a sort of similar experience of, having some sort of spiritual background. Some of us have, maybe been brought up completely secular humanists or whatever, and just like no spirituality whatsoever. I know in the UK in particular, people are not as religious as they are like, zealous Christian kind of thinking as they are out here in the States, but there is still sort of Judeo-Christian background that most Westerners come from, that we tend to get away from, and we start to pursue our own things. So I sort of want to start it off that way. I also do have to apologize to any attendees. I just had 2 repairmen show up at the door that I did not know were coming today. So if they come back, I might have to put it on pause. Please bear with me, and I'll edit this in the recording later so that we don't have any interruptions and blank space or whatever. But I have Iajahnni today, Iajahnni Matthew-Von, quite a mouthful there. And I'm gonna oh, you have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, hon. Go ahead and say hi.
Stop muting me. Stop muting me.
Yes, I know. I won't mute you anymore.
Welcome, everybody.
Yes, thank you for being here. I have your little bio here. You're an intuitive tarot reader, energy teacher, magical ritual facilitator, yoga instructor. Basically, you do all of these things: crystal healing, Reiki, pranic healing, Wicca, Hoodoo, Rootwork, and Conjure. Those are some things that I actually want to get into in particular. I know I keep saying the phrase "in particular" for some reason today. It's just a thing. And you're doing mediumship training. You're also particularly, there it is again, interested in talking about using our personal spiritual practices to build community. And so I kind of wanted to start with that. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask you to sort of give us like, where did you come from spiritually? Were you raised with any particular spirituality? How did you get away from it? If you did, how do you incorporate that into your own stuff now? I was raised in a Christian cult. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and I kind of like broke out of it at 18. And then I just went, with all of the different spiritual traditions and studied everything I could get my hands on. And I went from there. I noticed some other people do not have that same experience, so what's your background? And what was it like for you, especially being a gay man?
Oh, well, there are some parallels. Let's see. I live in Kentucky, and it is part of the Bible Belt. So I grew up Baptist, and we switched over to Apostolic. I was in it to win it. I was very devout, got baptized at 12, like you're supposed to, did all the things. And then puberty hit, and I was just like, oh, I like boys. And that was kind of a life changer for me. So went through the whole trying to be like, oh, this is a sin and I want to be good. And the pastor sat me down and was just like, well, you have a lot of sisters and you probably heard them talking about men, and that's the thing that influenced you, blah, 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 blah. And so when I got to college, I was just like, none of this feels right. I'm going to just kind of do my own thing and kind of figure out what I need to be doing, because the life that's being modeled for me does not feel authentic, does not feel right for me. And as much as I was indoctrinated, I'm almost 50, but I feel like I'm still working through those patterns. Like they still show up in my life from time to time. I'm just like, one of the things specifically that I'm working through is stop modeling my life around external narratives and ignoring my internal drives and desires and pulses and stuff like that. So went to college, and this is a college town that I live in, but I didn't want to stay here, obviously, because I wanted to branch out and kind of have the opportunity to grow on my own. So I went to the neighboring town, and there met my first true best friends, both of them. And she actually was a hereditary witch. And so we were sitting in her dorm room one day, and I saw some of her books, and I'm just like, what is this? She had a bunch of Scott Cunningham books, and he's a really famous, well-known Wiccan author. And I was just like, what is this? And I was fascinated. And I'm just like, magic is real? And she's like, yeah, this is, what I grew up with. Hooked from then on. Hooked from then on. I just learned as much as I could over the following years. Nashville, Tennessee is one of the biggest cities closest to me. So I think it was a year and a half going every weekend, going to metaphysical classes, just absorbing as much as I possibly could. Now, the thing is, though, I wasn't particularly interested in the magic part of it. What I fell in love with was the spirituality of the nature worship, and that sexuality isn't a sin. Everything is good isn't a sin. Everything natural isn't a sin. All the chart that line in the charge of the goddess, all acts of pleasure are my rights. That sort of thing really just kind of spoke to me, and I'm just like, okay, I can vibe with this. This feels honest. This feels like I'm moving in the right direction. So I was Wiccan for several years, continuing to learn. I finally realized that I didn't want to be in a religion. In a lot of ways, Wicca is just the way that I was incorporating it, and I think a lot of people will fall into this trap. You have this religious framework that was built in Christianity, and then you leave Christianity and you become into paganism or Wicca, but you still use that same framework. And I'm still relating to higher power, deity, and kind of modeling my life in those same ways. I was just using different language. So as I progressed, I decided to get out of religion completely and just kind of devote myself to figuring out what's right for me. And so that's been my continuous thing, just learning, experiencing, connecting with people, learning how they're navigating life. Obviously, being a minority, a Black man has colored a lot of my experiences. Being a gay man has colored a lot of my experiences. So yeah, it's just learning how to fall in love with myself and who I am has been the I guess the candle, the light, the focus of my spirituality. And as I become more comfortable in myself and learn techniques and had these experiences, I'm like, well, this is awesome. It's helped me. So now I'm trying to share what I know with other people.
No, that's beautiful. I think that also mirrors the sort of process of falling in love with your own particular form of spirituality. Like you said, going from Christianity to Wicca or something like that. It's like you have this perfect framework. In some ways, Wicca to me does seem religious, and I'm not knocking anybody who's Wiccan or anything like that, but it's very structured and formal or whatever, which is why as soon as I started studying it, I was like, this is too familiar. I want something else, And I find that most of the people that I talk to, especially in the queer community, maybe it's just gay men. I don't think so. Maybe we're just like anti-tradition and we're just like all about being rebels or whatever. But no, I really think it's something that speaks to our spirit in general, which is just like, I can be accepting of many things and accept them within myself, nurture them within myself and create something wholly me, or something unique or interesting. Most of us end up being eclectic, and I think that that's important. I wonder, do you feel that that's like part and parcel with the queer experience? Because it just seems to be coming up over and over to me.
True, I do. And I think that stems from tradition, and rigid formats are not built to empower people. They're so disempowering. And I think there's there's a lack of trust in established systems, because those
Mhm.
usually aren't for the benefit of the people who are in those systems. So yeah, as a gay man, it's an odd place, but it's a very blessed place to be outside the system, where you can look at it and say, ooh, this is where all the harm is happening. I can see what's useful, and I'll pull from that, use that. But a lot of this is not helpful for anybody. So I can see that clearly. I'm not caught in that vein, so I can move in a different way.
Mhm. I wonder also if it's more part and parcel with the American experience in general too, or maybe just our version of Western society. I interviewed my friend Ben Stimpson last time we did this. He's also from Wales, Mark, and moved to Canada when he was 8 years old, and he's into fairy folklore and the folklore of the British Isles and everything. And his take on it was a little hard for me to relate in some ways, because he was like, this is the experience I had. Yes, I had the experience of being queer, of being different, not really growing up with anything religious or whatever. Also having a difficulty accepting the fact that since he moved to Canada so early, he could have accepted the sort of geographic and cultural legacy that was there, because he was still a part of it, and yet he didn't go that path. And yet his whole take was that eventually you find your tribe, eventually you find your group and that kind of thing. And that just has never been the case for me. Like, I still feel like, even though I have all of you and like, yeah, we all do all the things all the time, I'm still sort of like on the fringe, like following my own weird little path. Can you resonate with that or not?
Yes and no. I think part of it, especially for gay men and all the challenges that we have, I think it's very hard for us to open up and be receptive enough to be a part of a tribe, because we're
Mhm.
always feeling like we have to hide ourselves. We're always having to protect ourselves. So I think that's something each of us consciously has to work through. Especially like if you're not used to receiving love, then even if you're in a tribe of very loving people, you can only receive as much as you have the capacity to, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
that there is a lot of work there. Part of my journey was appreciation. It was like I felt I'm a very giving person, but I don't feel super appreciated, or didn't feel super appreciated for the things that I did for people and the energy that I was giving out. And it wasn't until I actively started appreciating myself more did I feel that shift all around me. Like the energy was always there, but I wasn't able to receive it because I hadn't grown up in a space where I was appreciated and valued, and the things that I would did for others were recognized. But once I started doing it for myself, then I could feel it from other people. Then that made me feel closer to my tribe. So I feel that's a big part of it.
Hmm.
Two, as gay men, I think we have been conditioned to be very superficial, to be afraid of getting deep with other people, being vulnerable in relationships on all levels. So I think a big part of that is just the conditioning, where sometimes it's not even offered. Like if you're in a gay space, the energy is so superficial. Like you might want and do need to connect on those deeper levels with people, but just the indoctrination and not feeling safe around other people keeps it from going deeper. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of levels, there's a lot of things to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, especially about the superficiality within the community. It's so strange, because when I was first growing up and coming out of the closet, whether it was a spiritual motivation or not, I found that it was very much about like vulnerability and sort of that support group mentality. And I feel like that's sort of dropped away the more that people are just allowed to come out of the closet, and gay culture is just kind of everywhere. Like New Orleans is very, very queer, but I also find that there is this level of overt sexuality and superficiality that everybody seems to present themselves as just like sex pots, just dripping with sexual energy. And it's just all of a sudden like kink is the only thing that you can be, and you have to identify as just like super queer and super. I'm like, every time I see it, maybe it's just what Facebook feeds me or the people that I run into at certain places or whatever. But I'm just starting to get like a little more with the whole culture, the way gay culture has been going in recent years, because I don't fit into those categories. To me, that's what makes me queer, and at the same time, it seems to be becoming this other thing, like how can you be a little more subversive? How can you be a little more weird? How can you be even more overtly sexual? Can you respond to that at all?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I see that a lot as well. Even though it's much more subdued here. Like I said, I'm in Kentucky, so I've heard
Yeah.
that we have a kink scene. I've heard, that people love to get down to play like that.
It's
For me, I think, what's the best way to put it? We're in this age of radical individualism.
yes.
Um, and for me, that's just simply we've been so conservative and been on one end of the spectrum for so long and rigid, and everybody had to look a certain way and be a certain way. And now we've swung the pendulum over here. Now we're the extreme where everybody has like, I'm this monolith. My personal experiences are just the most important thing. I'm completely different from everybody, yada, yada, yada. I think we're just at that space where we have to find the middle ground. Like,
Mhm.
you don't have to scream from the mountaintops that you're gay. You don't have to look a certain way or be a certain way. You can just exist and be
Mhm.
gay. You can just enjoy your life and be gay. It doesn't have to be this huge spectacle. And again, part of the spectacle, and I see this with a lot of gay men, is like they create these personas for themselves. One problem is they create personas for themselves, hoping that people will fall in love with the persona and that will help them build community, which of course is empty because you can't be that persona all the time. And as soon as that falls away, the people who only liked you because you only showed them persona, they'll eventually fall off, or they won't be in there in the ways that you need. The
Mhm.
other is, I think, a very destructive defense mechanism where you come into situations and you connect with people thinking, well, they're not going to like me because you have all the security around being gay. And so you overcompensate either in the people pleasing way, or what I see more often is, I know you're going to not like me, so I'm going to be as obnoxious as I possibly can so you're not liking me on my terms. And so I think that's a very dangerous place for people to put themselves in. All of it keeps you from having legitimate, deep, supportive connection with other people. But again, it's that vulnerability that's needed. But gay people, lesbians, everybody on the spectrum, there's just never been a period where we could be vulnerable, be safe, and not face, physical, emotional, mental harm. So it's getting better, but I think we just have to realize that those factors are always at play.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder how it relates to our spiritual journeys in general, because I do see a lot of spiritual posturing and a lot of performative spirituality, especially happening like on social media. And I understand the outside to inside approach, but I swallowed the nugget of wisdom really early that all of the important work happens on the inside. You're supposed to find God in here or whatever, not in a church or even in a forest or whatever. And so it's like people, when they first wake up spiritually, they'll do the thing and suddenly they're wearing the Shiva beads and they're, you know, putting on the, you know, the, I don't know, you know, the garb or whatever to identify as a spiritual type person or whatever. I feel like it's the same sort of reaction that we have. It's like, oh, well, if I, you know, if I dress myself up a certain way, then I'm going to be accepted within these communities. Then I'm going to find a place within these communities and so on.
Capitalism. If you buy the thing, then you can be the thing.
Right. And I really think it's fine. It's, you know, how do you feel about spiritual communities in general being inclusive or non-inclusive places or spaces for queer individuals? You know, I mean, I recently was thinking about or hearing about this one group, and they were doing some really amazing work with sort of not multiple personalities, but sort of hypnosis and going into the different layers. You could think of it as like past lives that we all have and different, you know, different voices in our heads and stuff like that. But they specifically had this thing that being gay was a result of all of the programming that your family gave you, pretty much like the original psychological model from Freud that we are all taught. And so you find weird little places that are supposed to be accepting and all spiritual or whatever, and they're still not accepting of queer people.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's a hard one. I guess I'll put it this way. I think every place should be inclusive, but not necessarily incorporating. Maybe to put it simply, people need their own spaces, right? Like, don't exclude people because you don't understand them or because they're different from you. That causes a problem. But I think every group kind of needs their own space in which to heal. And if they have outsiders from that group as a part of it, I think they'll be more performative and not look at their shadow, not look at what their issues are. They're just going to be trying to keep the peace. So yes, I do believe every space should be inclusive. You shouldn't be trying to demonize, or definitely don't try to explain other people and don't include them in the explanation. I think that's what gets us in the biggest problem. But like, it's okay for like a Latino group to have deal with Latino matters. It's okay for a Jewish group to be Jewish people and deal with Jewish matters. I think the problem is if you don't have other people or different identities in that group, you start to just only see stereotypes and stuff. So if you are in a very specialized group, be aware of that tendency and make sure you're not falling into those traps. But yeah, I think everybody needs their own kind of safe space. You know, we have created, you know, this gay man safe space. The energy would be different if we had, you know, straight women, lesbians, or straight guys. I mean, it would just change the dynamic. So it's not that we don't want to welcome those people, but I personally don't feel like I can share and do all the things and express myself as honestly in blended spaces. But I don't want to keep them out because I don't like them or I don't understand them. I just don't think I can bring up the things that I need to do if the space is too blended. So it's finding that happy medium between it.
Mm-hmm.
But just don't be an asshole keeping people out for stupid reasons.
No, that's great. And I think that's something that we have to come to accept in our modern culture, where it is all about inclusivity and acceptance and inclusivity and acceptance. And those are wonderful things or whatever, but people do need their own spaces. You know, JP was very specific because when I first started advertising this group, I thought it was just queer, all inclusive. You know, he's like, no, this is just for the boys, you know, anybody who is male identifying, you know. And so that's the way that we keep it. And like you said, you can bring up certain issues in this group that we wouldn't feel comfortable bringing up otherwise, you know. I'm just going to get to some of the comments or whatever, and just to remind everybody, we'll do the question and answer after we finish the interview, and just me and Iajahnni going back and forth. So if you have any specific questions or whatever, go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat. That way we don't forget, and we'll get back to them later. This is an interesting one. Just talking about the overt sexuality, that we're experiencing right now. Wayne says it comes in decades, like every few decades that overt sexuality comes back. I sort of remember that, like the original leather scene or whatever. And I can't remember what this one scene was called in San Francisco that rose up amongst gay men was a pushback from the more cis male identifying gay men within that culture against the sort of feminine, queer, loosey goosey, like over feminized style that people were starting to stereotype gay men as. And so they were just like accentuating their bulges, t-shirt and jeans, everything rolled up, and just being like very, very masculine presenting and that kind of stuff. So I suppose it's just another version of that, like everything is gone off the rails these days with all culture anyway, Miley Cyrus, whomever, and so everybody just has to go even. Yes, Tom of Finland. Thank you, JP. All that kind of stuff. Let me see. I'm just reading. Except first, come from within. Yeah, I agree. It always has to come from within. And honestly, just in this conversation, it brings up some things personally for myself. I have always been very resistant to doing group work with people. And I really think it does come from that sort of like original trauma, of being within a completely inclusive group like the Jehovah's Witnesses. We were all God's chosen people. And then suddenly leaving that, I'm like, whoa, anybody wants to do any group work with me? I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm like, I'm protecting myself and I don't want to be vulnerable or whatever. So that's probably honestly why I'm still on the fringe and haven't found my tribe, just being honest. Okay. Oh, interesting. Wayne says he's had a lot of cis women trying to jump in to these groups. So that's fun. I wonder what it would be like if we had some of the Goyles. Okay, so I'm just going to get to some of the other topics. Like I particularly wanted to talk about, and I don't know how much work you do with like hoodoo and that kind of stuff or root work, but I was wondering if you could just like clarify exactly what that is, because I think it's one of those traditions that gets just kind of brushed under the rug, or people have just so much misinformation about it. Part of the African diaspora and American culture in particular, and especially down here. I mean, I live in New Orleans, so.
Well, I'm not an expert, so let me say that. I came to Hoodoo Rootwork and Conjure like after I learned everything else, actually. What drew me to it, though, is I felt like the connection to my ancestors was missing. And so that practice gave me a very, very important piece that was missing. For me, and hoodoo, oh my gosh, learning it to begin with was very confusing. It is an Southern African American spirituality. But it has been, like anything else, commodified, and it has changed hands so many times that people will just throw anything together and call it hoodoo. My biggest issue with that is if you don't honor where something originated, like everything evolves, everything changes over time. But of course, that colonized kind of mentality of, oh, I see something, I like this thing, I'm going to take this thing, rebrand it, and then sell it. And I think that is probably the biggest issue in hoodoo, because you can get certifications and all these trainings with people who have no connection to the community, but because they've repackaged it and repurposed it in a way that's more palatable to another group, now this other group thinks, well, this is hoodoo. And so people who are in the original sphere of what it was supposed to be, it's just like, that's not hoodoo. But they're like, well, no, because I paid all this money, so this is hoodoo, and this is what I can. So it's gotten very messy. So what can you do about that?
Yeah.
When I was first introduced to hoodoo, it was just a magical practice based on the spirituality of Southern Black folk. But now it's, I hear all the time that it's a full-blown religion. It is a closed practice now, like only certain people are even allowed to do it. And I think that is in opposition to what I was just talking about. It's been commodified, been taken over, been changed so much. So for me, just connecting with my ancestors is the most important part. There's so much healing, there's so much wisdom, there's so much protective just in the ancestor veneration aspect of it, that it's really allowed me to blossom as a person. And I'm one of those people. One of the things that I found really difficult about hoodoo was kind of the spiritual posturing that you can find a lot in that space. It is, oh well, this is in my family. I sat at grandmother's knee. She taught me everything. All my ancestors, I know them by name, and I have this beautiful altar to all of them. I didn't have that. I didn't have my spirituality handed to me. Nobody else in my family practices anything other than Christianity. So when I approach it and whenever I teach hoodoo, I kind of come from the space of hoodoo for everybody else. The people that who have to read all the books because there's not a grandmother who taught them the ways. The people who have to who don't either know their ancestors or they have very difficult or toxic relationships with those ancestors. So it's like you hear the question all the time. Well, my answer was somebody who was abusive. I don't want to call them into hell. For me, and it's something that I'm still working through. I didn't have a good relationship with my father, but now that he's passed, he has come back several times trying to help me in ways that he wasn't able to and wasn't equipped to while he was alive. I'm still working through my issues with him, so a lot of times I won't accept his help. But once somebody's on the other side, they have a completely different perspective. So it's one of the reasons I'm focusing on the mediumship now. There's a wisdom over there that you gain once you do your life review. You see what you accomplished. You see the places that you didn't do as well as you could have. So I really feel like ancestor worship, ancestor veneration, and creating and maintaining those relationships is positive. But while you're still in the physical, you do have to work through all the emotions that are there tied to any toxic or negative relationships that existed. But for me, just that the core of Hoodoo Rootwork and Conjure is connecting with that bloodline, that lineage. And I'm not just Black, I am 60%, 40% Nigerian, but also have like 20% Irish. So it's all the ancestors. I've got some Swedish in me. I've got just I'm from all over the place. So, honoring all those ancestors, that journey has been very interesting. It got a little weird though. I'll just throw this out here because as I meditate with all my ancestors, the Nigerians who were the biggest lot were just like, yeah. And then the Irish were like, but we're here too. And like the people because I did the DNA test, the ones that only have like 1%, they're just like, we're here too. We want to be honored. So I'm like, okay. I'm consciously, sending gratitude to everybody, even if it's just 1%. But then the non-human entities came through and they're just like, you're not just human too. There's other things in there too. So I'm just like, okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, that's getting out there for me. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe we're all descended from all different entities and they've had influence over humanity in their own ways. So running through my veins, thank you all. I appreciate all the help that you give me.
No, if our friend Ryan was here, he's our resident Buddhist who usually joins us. He'd be the first one to say, in his tradition, we have lived infinite lives on infinite planets and infinite dimensions and blah 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 blah. And so
yes.
in some ways, it's just like we're all of that, and that honestly, in some ways, is a very new age idea, in some ways, but in others, it speaks to me personally as well. Also, it's a very American story. You know, talking to my friend Ben, the last recording that we did, he's English or he's Welsh, you know, like that's his ancestry and that's what he knows and that's what he can go back to. And so we talked about, like I mentioned earlier, it's like he was displaced and then he had to accept that there was this beautiful, rich spiritual culture in the land, Canada, where he mostly grew up after that point, and that, you know, he wanted to work with that as well, and that he could have been a part of it if he really chose to. He didn't really relate to it until later. It's a very American story to me, like what you're talking about, and my own personal experience. I have 1% North African in me, which comes from the Mexican in me, which is almost half of my genetic profile. Mexican itself is indigenous and Spanish and also Italian, and but like it's so incredibly diverse. It's like, just take your pick, you know, like throw a dart on a map and you can connect to some ancestors. The only thing I'm not is Asian. You know?
I didn't have any Asian either. No.
Yeah. I even have some European Jewish ancestry. I'm just like, I've always felt like a deep connection to the Judeo part of my Judeo-Christian upbringing in particular. For whatever reason, I've just felt connected to that. And so it's got to be there too, you know, but I kind of wanted to move it to a little more practical matters, like just talking about ancestor veneration and working with the ancestors and in sort of a mediumship capacity and all of that. How does one work with the ancestors, and who do you choose, especially for queer folks who feel disconnected from their ancestors because either their ancestors who were queer may have been marginalized and closeted and persecuted, or because they are marginalized and closeted and persecuted, and their ancestors might have been slave-owning dickheads. Let's just put it that way. Like, how do you deal with that?
I tried the traditional route first, which is you create an altar space, you put pictures of the deceased relatives, you make sure you have water because water is a wonderful conduit for spirit, and then you can feed them, like if you know the things that they enjoy eating, it's offerings every day of some type. I did that for a while and really didn't do anything. It helped. It got me in the space of kind of at least thinking about my ancestors every day, but that doing it that way really didn't connect with me. But what I do now is it's a 3-part kind of method. It's mostly just meditation. I don't need a physical altar. I don't need anything like that because I am the altar for the ancestors. Their energy runs through my veins, my blood, that energy. And so it's basically, one, get quiet and give thanks. You know, you are here because of all of your ancestors, all that they sacrificed, all that they created. You are here for that. So just get in that space of quiet and just thank them. And then be quiet and listen. Like that. I mean, it's obvious, but I don't think a lot of people give enough importance to being still and just listening to the voices, listening to the wisdom that's there. So once you give your thanks, that opens the door, then you just be quiet and allow them to, for me, it comes across, I mean, it's usually visions of some sort. It's a whole thing. And then once that happens, out loud, ask them for their protection, for their guidance, and for their intercession to work on your behalf in your life for your highest good and your benefit always. And they always do. But if you just do those 3 simple things, you are connecting to your ancestors in a very, very powerful way. So you can augment it with all the trappings, with all the things, with the altars and whatnot. But if you just thank them, listen to them, and ask them to be active in your life, you will be golden.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for those. It's just popped into my head. I put it in the chat. It's almost like your parents telling you to be quiet and listen to your elders, like your grandma, your grandpa, or whatever. Be quiet and listen to your ancestors. I love that. So you wanted in particular, there's that phrase again, to talk about using your own spiritual practice for community building. I just kind of want to let you riff on that. Just take it away.
Okay. Well, going back to, I wanted to find my tribe, and if you don't see what you want in the world, then it is your responsibility to create it. So a lot of the work that I've been doing for years, like there was an established group on Facebook. It was a bunch of friends who were witchy and Christian adjacent. They decided to start BG Witch Meetup. They had a dinner meetup every month, and that went on for years. I joined it when I was in college, and I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. The people are neat, but they weren't really doing anything but, kind of dinner meetups and that sort of thing. And so I got out of it, did some other things, came back, and I was just like, I need to build my community. I need people who feel the way that I do. I need people who have a similar outlook, people that I can grow from, people that I can share my experiences with. And so I just started being active. I started creating events, like things that were actually interesting to me. I put it out there and created a space for people who are also interested to come in. I think community building gets, I think we overthink it. Everybody wants connection, especially since 2020 and COVID hit. Everybody is desperate for connection again. But at the same time, we're really afraid to put ourselves out there, to be vulnerable, to say, this is who I am. So it's getting out of that fear, just finding something simple like meditation, like a group meditation or whatever, and creating a space for people to come in and share their experiences. For me, I mean, it's really taken off. It took several years. I had to be consistent for several years, but now I've got people coming in all the time because, like I said, everybody's looking to connect. The things that I've noticed that you need to be aware of is when you're in the spiritual space, most of us are harboring some kind of wound and we're looking for community to help us to grow. Don't let people trauma dump. That's the first thing. A lot of times we will get in there and I'm just like, are you here because you want to do the thing with us? Or are you here because you need a new audience for your trauma? So being very upfront with that, cutting that off when it happens. And it took me a couple of years to kind of get in a place where I was comfortable saying, hey, this isn't what this is for, I had to make a post about it. I'm just like, if someone is coming to how to make a dream pillow, they should not be broadsided with childhood trauma,
Yeah.
But we will have other events for like healing from your narcissistic ex. Those were the examples that I used. Trauma dump and like share all the emotion that you need to in that space, but don't let it come over into this space. And everybody was very receptive to that because I think a lot of times you want to connect with people, but you don't want them to emotionally vomit on you. And I think that's a big problem in spiritual communities. I've noticed it more when you're dealing with female and female identifying, because that's mostly what I work with. So it's very interesting to be in male spaces. Like my other group is the Brotherhood of Male Witches. And so we don't have hardly any of that, which is good and bad, because the thing about guys, and I think we have to be very careful of this, is where women will create communities to support each other and maybe have the trauma dumping as an issue, men will isolate themselves. And when you isolate yourselves, you can get into very dark places. So it's always for guys, in that group, I'm just like, if you're having trouble, don't just disappear. You can go into your cave for a little bit, get your mind straight and come back, but don't be gone for too long, because that can be very dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I have to say on that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, it's essentially what I'm trying to do now with myself, with this meeting, the previous meetings. We're trying to create at least an online community where people can have that space. I'm also doing a lot more online on my social media. I'm trying to get some energy healing events together. For a long time, I just sort of like kept it all to myself. I was sort of like exploded like around 2009 onward for like a decade or so. I was making all of these videos and just like putting all of the healing out there, and here's my spiritual journey, because I was young and stupid, you know. And it's so much easier. It's so much easier when you're young and stupid. Just be like, I don't care what anybody thinks, And then I realized I had all this other, like internal work to do, and relationship work, and relationship with myself work. Yeah, I was experiencing spiritual bliss, and I was, having ecstatic trance states pop up or whatever, and I'm, sharing all this energy, and it was like helping so many people or whatever. But then the relation aspect of it was the thing that I needed to work on. And I'm like, I've been working on that steadily for like another decade. And now all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty freaking good at this. I'm just gonna once again just like let it all explode out there, and I've got the wisdom at this point, I believe, like a lot more grounded than I was back then. But it's a completely different experience. You go through so many things in a spiritual journey and just in life in general. Okay, so yeah, I'm ready to create.
And something that I think is important for everybody to remember, because I struggle with this one. I want it to be perfect, I want it to be just so before I'm ready to present it out to the world. And I'm just like, everybody is just making shit up as they go. Like, don't hold yourself back. Don't try to make it perfect before you do the thing. Just do the thing. Man. Like, if you want to connect with other people, just get a space. Say, we're going to do this thing. Anybody who's interested, just come and do it. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Right. No, like some happy merging of the two, happy marriage of the two, the sense of wanting to get something right, wanting to get it perfect. I know that there's no perfect, but then that also that young, naive, just like, I'm just going to put it all out there. And I don't care if I mess up. I don't care if nobody likes me. Somewhere in the middle road, I need to find that, that would be perfect, because I got so locked into the no, I'm just, and it's not like I care what anybody thinks or whatever, but I want to do it right. It's not like perfect. I want to do it right so that I speak to the most people possible and everyone understands. That's never going to freaking happen. So, you just got to.
Never going to happen.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to get into, and this is going to be a little bit heavy. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world right now. And I just wanted to talk about spiritual activism, especially for the queer community. I see a lot of people getting really freaked out right now. I literally had somebody who stayed up at my cabin several years ago, identifies as they, them, and so obviously in the queer community has been studying Buddhist for a long time, and they're ready to basically just pack it all in and move to the forest and completely isolate, because Jeff called me for some reason. That was weird. He wants that clip. We'll get it later. So he's ready to basically just like move to the forest, isolate, because the next nuclear war is going to happen. Like all of this craziness that's going on. The sort of, to me, it's like a young spirit, especially when you're just waking up spiritually, to want to go and protest and get loud and get angry and make your voice heard. And then the opposite of that, which is getting a little older and a little wiser and realizing that you don't necessarily have to be waving the protest flags around all the time to make a difference, especially if you're somebody who is a spiritual seeker, a spiritual practitioner or whatever. And how do you speak to people who are sort of on the fence, like they think that it's sort of their spiritual duty to get angry and to get, loud and make their voices heard and try to make a difference. And I understand it comes from wanting to make things better, so don't let me disclude that. Yeah.
Ooh, there are a lot of layers to that. I think.
Yeah, I know.
Let's try to go through each of them. So the protesting, I think protesting is very important for the people that feel called to do that. Having just knowing that there is that pushback, there are people who are ready to fight. I think all of that plays into a much larger program, a much larger conversation. So yeah, I would say if that's where you're guided to do, absolutely protest. The thing is, you can be an activist in so many different ways. There's something for everybody to do. So just figure out what's right for you. The thing I will say about protesting, if you're going to go that route, make sure it's constructive, that it's not just you emotionally manipulating a situation to get your heavy feelings out. I think a lot of people are very angry right now, and if you're using that righteous anger to make very positive change, that's amazing. But if you're just shouting into the void because you're upset and it's triggering wounds that you haven't healed inside, that's not helping anybody. So if you're going to protest, if you're going to take the active role, then let it be constructive. On the other end of the spectrum, yes, if you can fundraise and donate to things, do that. But the flip side of that is don't throw money at a problem and say, well, somebody else deal with it. I'm just going to throw money at this. And it's not my issue. I did my thing. I guess overall, just make sure what you're doing is in line with your spirit, that you're using your
Mhm.
talents and abilities and energy to create the world that you want. Don't use the chaos as your way to basically get off on your intense emotions.
Mhm.
That's just wasted energy.
Right. Yeah, that's I think that's a really good point. I've seen a lot of people over the years, especially when I was captioning the news, and it would be either Obama's election, Trump's election, all these different political things in between, and people who were just seething with rage over these issues. And like, I understand it comes from a place of righteousness. You could even say it's
Mhm.
righteous anger, but to a certain point, it doesn't do anything. And I would just be like, this is not in line with my form of spirituality, and so I just want, and thank you for that's very helpful. I just want to be able to speak to those people who are waking up spiritually, who are on a spiritual path, but feel that they have to participate in those ways. And I just wanted to bring up the idea of having ceremonies, having group rituals as an act of protest in a
Mhm.
spiritual way, like especially for the queer community. I think that would be really, really helpful, something to do.
Yes. So what I'm actually doing, so to to kind of illustrate, we had a teenager who was here legally, but he was detained by ICE, and they've taken him out of Kentucky, and he's in Louisiana right now. So we've had um, pushback, really good pushback, to try to get him back here where he's supposed to be. And so people are helping in the ways that are appropriate to them. There have been a lot of vigils at churches to get people aware of what's going on. My best friend has contacted the ACLU. And so they now got eyes on this situation. There's a GoFundMe, so you can donate if that's what you need to do. What we're doing specifically is, like, we went to the vigil at a church, and I was like, that's awesome. They're doing their thing. How can we do ours? So I have put an event together that all the witches here and all the magic workers locally, we're going to do work around transmuting that energy. Um, and I think, to your point, whatever your skill set is, do that thing to make the world better. We're going to have this big ritual. We're going to do all this energy work around it because that is where our skill sets lie. Again,
Mm.
do the
Mhm.
thing that's effective. Just make sure that you're not doing it like, we're not coming at this from a place of like, oh, I'm upset about this thing, so we're all going to get together and we're going to trauma dump about our fears, and then we're just going to make some nice affirmations and feel good like we've done something, and then we're going to go home.
Yeah.
So, that's very disingenuous, but I think that kind of mentality is very prevalent in spiritual communities. So
Mhm.
we want to make sure we're doing the thing, we're doing all the things on all the levels. But yes, work where you are led to do, but make sure you're actually doing work.
Yeah, that's always part of my MO as well. It's like do the freaking work. When it comes to like energy healing and things like that, we would always talk about not getting into the trap of doing drive-by healings. So it's just like the whole metaphor is just like you're driving down the highway and you see this horrible car wreck and you're like, oh, love and light, Reiki, Reiki, Reiki. Okay, bye. Like that's not helping.
Okay, bye.
That's not healing. That's deflection. So yeah, make sure you do
Thoughts
the
and
work.
prayers.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Taking
So
thoughts and prayers.
so for this, first of all, thank you for everything. All of that was awesome. At this point, I just want to open it up for all of the questions. Anybody who wants to just come on and ask a question, use the raise your hand function in the Google Meets, and we'll get to you one by one. And do know, of course, that if you unmute yourself and speak, then you will be on camera. So, yeah, that's always a thing. I do have some little things in the Chatty McChat. Wayne wanted to know who's your go-to Orisha. Do you ever work with the Orishas?
Ooh, okay, so that's interesting. Um, I didn't work with deity for a long time. Again, I didn't want to fall into the Christian framework. I didn't want to worship something. I wanted to step into my own power. But deities do come to me, and I've started working with them, very actively. The Orisha, the first Orisha that came to me was Obatala, and so that's been a wonderful relationship, along with a bunch of other deities. But here recently, uh, Olodumare has come to me, and that's been really exciting. Um, I think that he has made himself uh, known to me because when the way that I perceive deities is that they are arch basically mental archetypes. Like all the deities that have come to me are energies that I want to fully embody and express into the
Mhm.
physical. So that's been really interesting, like all these different aspects of myself, aligning them with these higher archetypes. That's been really amazing. But Oludumare, I think he's come to me now because I'm at this place where I need to do work that isn't so physical. Like my deal is I didn't want to be one of those spiritual people who is working in all these higher dimensions with these angels and these guides and these gods, but my physical life is a mess. Like to me, what are you doing if you're doing all this high spiritual work, but the physical is a hot mess? So that's one of the reasons that I didn't do deity work for a long time. But now I'm healing that kind of binary thinking. I can do both of those things at once. And it's important that I do and express and ground myself in the spectrum as a whole. And I'm still researching Olodumare, but his thing is he doesn't work directly with the physical world. That's what all the other Orisha are for. He's the supreme god. And it's for me, the message is there is a part of my spirit that I've been neglecting. I need to work in those higher realms and do that work as much as I'm trying to do the physical thing and be very present and real at the same time. So this is a new development and I'm enjoying where it's going, but I feel like there's a lot of growth there. But yeah, those are the two Orisha that have really spoken to me. And
Beautiful.
just as a side note, I mean, that's very interesting. Like going back to hoodoo, everybody has their twist on it. Like some people will say you have to work in the Christian realm for hoodoo. Others are just like, no, it's about the Orisha and the African god. So everybody has their own take on it. For me, I'm more of the let me go back to the African, the roots. I don't
Mhm.
want the Christianized version of it because that's what they had to do just to survive. So for me, it doesn't work. I'm not going to use the Bible in my spell work usually, but you know, do what works for you.
Yes, whatever works for you. For our wedding, my partner is going to do Baron Samedi. It's going to be interesting. It was going to be Papa Legba at first, but I'm like, I don't know. Peter, you had your hand up.
Is it unmute? Can you hear me?
And now we can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I wanted to really go back and to that part where you said that I love how you said that if you don't see what you like in the world, create it. I think that I have that model. If I'm not seeing what I like within myself, or I audit myself, I audit myself to create tools to embody those. And also, I loved how you said that trauma dumping, I think in relationships as well, like people in gay culture or anyone, man or woman, can be vulnerable to trauma dumping. They might think that trauma dumping is vulnerability. Oh wow, he's opening up to me. Oh my god, it feels amazing. You know, like how do you navigate that in your own life?
Yeah. For me and in our group, it's I try to be very aware. Like, you have to talk about situations. That's important. You need to communicate what's going on, because the simple act of sharing your story is so powerful. Trying to communicate what's going on internally really makes you work through it, you know, if you're trying to make somebody else understand. So absolutely do that. The thing is, when I notice it happening is, all right, you've shared this story before. We heard this last time. All right, just every time you get a new audience, you're rehashing the same thing. And I try to make people very aware of that, because you don't want to trauma dump, but two, you don't want to trauma bond.
Yeah.
Because if you and I had this traumatic experience and we come together because of that, great. But are you going to is it going to deter your healing? If the bad thing gave you the connection, is healing from the bad thing going to break the connection? You know what I mean? So you want to be very careful that you're not trauma bonding with people, because you're going to actually hold each other back. You're going to keep each other from healing because you don't want to lose that bond. So it's just being aware of those dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, would you say that there is a stage of unwillingness to release? And also, I notice with clients, when they are trauma dumping and I'm holding space, sometimes it's like they have to go through it over and over until they have that, or where's the cutoff, do you think? Because there is a stage of unwillingness to release.
Yes. Yes. Oh, what's the best way to say that?
Or is there a dance? It's a dance.
It is kind of a dance. For me, it's like, if you're unwilling to release, it's because I'll use myself as an example. When I find that I am unwilling to release, it's because I can't visualize, I can't feel the better thing on the other side of it. I don't believe that exists. So I want to hold on to what's familiar. So I don't want to release something, even though it's harmful, even though it's hurting, because I don't believe something else is there. So if you can gradually help them build that vision of the better thing, the new way that they can express themselves, the new experiences that they can have, I think that will help them get to the release and be like, okay, I don't want to keep holding on to this, because now I can feel, or at least believe, that there's something better for me out there. And I think if you can gently walk them to that point, then it's not trauma dumping. Then it's something that's going to be actually very valuable. But if they absolutely cannot see it and they absolutely refuse to release and to move forward, honor that, but then kind of work on something else. Then work on something that they are ready to.
Yeah, thank you for that. And also, I had this last question. I have a friend, and I wonder if this is a limiting belief because she said this to me a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "What?" I think that's a limiting belief. So she believes that I have a friend who's a coach as well, and she said to expand and reach more people, she needs to go through the hate comments and the cancel culture stuff. How else is she going to help people or thousands of people if she's freaking out over one hateful comment? I was like, isn't that limiting? Because I don't see Eckhart Tolle or other people going through hateful comment. Can't you be in neutrality without going through that and still grow instead of going through the hate comment and cancel culture and holding more space for that? Can't you just reframe and set the intention, shining that light without going through the mud and fighting for someone's healing? Like, I don't want to fight for someone's healing. Like, I'm just going to radiate that positivity without being bogged down by negativity. So is that negative? Is that a limiting belief that she has to go through that?
Hmm.
That she do the hateful comments, cancel culture, in order for her to grow?
I think it's important that you do need to look at the actual world in front of you, and if there's a lot of negativity, I think you do have to be aware of it. I think you should build healthy ways of dealing with it. No, I don't think that she needs to mire herself in it because, again, that almost feels like she's going to a place of self flagellation. Like she wants the high of getting in that negativity and being the one who's going to save and do all this other stuff. So no, I don't think she needs to necessarily go down that route. But yeah, just staying in that place of awareness of it. She doesn't have to wallow in the mud, but she does need to be aware that the mud is there. Um, as far as what you said, I think that's good to stay in that place of love and light and detachment, but just make sure the detachment is actual detachment, not avoidance.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think that yeah, we can have neutrality, and neutrality isn't a passive state. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much.
You're welcome. I hope that helps. Who else? Who else? Who has his hands raised? This is fun.
I like Wayne's comments in here. All his trauma dumping is through music now.
Okay. Use
Just,
it in a healthy way. That's
I
awesome.
don't know, he turned off his camera. I just imagine like Wayne sitting alone in the corner crying, going, "Someone left a cake out in the rain." Yeah, I know you.
Love you, Wayne.
All right. Anybody got anything else? There we go.
Yeah,
one thing JP said in here just real quick is just we were talking about spiritual activism and creating community, and he just said just telling your stories is huge right now. I just thought that was really cool, just because that's a huge thing that anybody can do, like for the first time in human history. You know, you can just get on the tiki-talkies and tell your story, and it is going to reach some people eventually. You know, I think that's important. It can be a form of personal therapy. It can be a form of spiritual service too, to share your wisdom or share your pain. Even again, not trauma dumping, and again, not rehashing the same trauma over and over and over. I say it is okay to relive your trauma a few times, but don't keep reliving it over and over and over. It doesn't really seem to do anything, which I think is also something that the therapeutic model could really use something from the spiritual community, is if those two things could come together, because some people seem to be in therapy endlessly and they just keep reliving the same pain over and over and over. I'm like, if you can find that release, you identify it, you get it out there, and then you actually have tools to make it go away, you know, to integrate it, not just like put it away, but integrate it and grow from it, you know.
And my thing is, the things that you repeat, I mean, that creates mental pathways. So if you're constantly telling the trauma story, you're constantly, reinforcing those pathways. Let's reinforce healing, not
Yeah,
not
exactly. Yeah.
past.
Thank you. Yeah. Mark, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to follow on from what you were saying about the therapeutic model, that just that I hope to incorporate a bit of the spirituality in with my practice, and that's the aim, sort of thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
It's sort of in the same vein, but hypnosis is considered a normal type of therapeutic model. Like it's mostly accepted by people in therapy culture. I think that that's fascinating because it is essentially a trance. You're putting somebody into a trance, and yet when you do this trance work in a clinical setting, and to me, this is what I see, it's like shamanic work or whatever. You're not setting up any protections. You're not calling on any like higher forces or anything. Anything can get in there. And I wish that people would take the sort of hypnotic therapy, hypnosis therapy, and combine it with something a little more spiritual. Like our spiritual leaders have been telling us for thousands of years, no, no, no. You need to burn the incense, and you need to do the mantras, and you need to set up a space, and it needs to be like a acceptable spiritual space, and you need to call in the ancestors, and you need to call in the deities or whatever. If we did that with hypnosis, I can't imagine the difference in results that a person would have. Like, my God, I've even thought about getting certified in hypnosis just so I could bring that to people. Anyway, good thing. Peter, you had your hand up again.
Oh, I was just wondering at the end, can I pull a rune at the end?
You want to pull a rune?
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead and do it.
Now?
Yeah. I got to get to an assignment in a while anyway. So.
Okay, let me pull a rune.
Pull a rune. You pull a rune, I'll pull a card.
Okay, perfect. So this is the rune. Take a minute to look at it. What do you see? Can you guys see?
Looks like someone meditating to me.
Huh?
Like the flame of awareness, somebody in the...
Okay.
It looks like infinity, right? Or a snake.
Yes, it's a snake. So this rune is about empower. In what ways have you been reclaiming your power? You have achieved a new level of empowerment through navigating a particular experience. You were gifted the opportunity to strengthen your commitment to yourself and can now make choices from a place of wholeheartedness, self-honoring. You earned this by courageously navigating pain and endless patterns of self-sacrifice, by prioritizing your well-being over choosing steaming of fear and loss and rejection and abandonment. Now simply sit back and witness the universe reflect back to you the values you've internally propagated. Continue to deepen your new groove by prioritizing you. With every choice you make, there is no limit to how empowered you can be with your life is a expression of love.
All right, that seemed pretty spot on for this conversation.
Pretty spot on. This is what I got. The ancient ones.
Oh,
Talking about ancestors and all of that. And yeah, I think that's pretty. Oh my God, it's card number 1. Okay. Yeah, I'm done.
nice.
All right. Well, thanks
The
for being
ancestors
here,
were here.
everybody.
They've answered.
Thank you so much. And one thing, Johnny, have you ever read the Sophia Code?
I have not.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking that since you do like the Divine Feminine a lot, you might like the Sophia Code.
Okay. I'll love a book recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you
That is good stuff. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Oh yeah. JP was just asking how we get a hold of you. We have our contact information on Facebook. So, did you want me to say that in the video? All right. All right. Cool.
No. Oh, feel free to add me, JP. That'd be awesome to talk to you.
Okay, good.
Definitely. I was just trying to get it into the podcast for.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm a person. Yeah, we're still recording. So, yay. Do you have a website or anybody or anywhere we can get a hold of you?
I'm just right now. I'm just on Facebook. Most of the stuff I do is in person, but yeah, I'm working to be better about having an online presence. I'm the only Iajahnni on Facebook, as far as I know, so pretty easy to find.
We can see your name, so it's pretty unique. So you should be easy to find.
Yes.
All right. I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Happy Pride, everybody. See y'all later.